So let me know if this sounds familiar. You are a nonprofit fundraiser. Maybe you're the ED or director of development or something like that. You've got an event coming up and you have asked your board to invite people to this event. Maybe there's a table captain situation, or maybe it's just inviting people to sit with them, or maybe it's ticketed. It doesn't matter. But the point is, you've asked, and then later you hear from board members, and they say, "Yeah, I didn't really know who to ask." And if you dig a little deeper, maybe you hear a board member say something like, "I don't know anyone who can make a really large gift in the room, so I didn't ask anybody." Now, your first instinct might be to say, "Wow, that board member doesn't know how to do the job. We're so frustrated with the board, and we're going to put all that energy in that direction." But there's another thing happening here, in that we have mistakenly given a lot of our board members the impression that capacity is the most important feature of both a board member and an event attendee or a tour attendee or a potential future donor. In other words, we've created a situation where the people who are closest to us, our board members, somehow think that the most important feature a potential donor can have is capacity to make a large gift. Now, this is troubling for two reasons. One, as individuals, we're very bad at judging the capacity of others, right? I mean, how are you judging that? Are you judging it by the job they have, or the car they drive, or the house they live in? All of those things aren't a real accurate representation of wealth. It doesn't necessarily tell you the whole story. The other reason why that's troubling is because clearly we've set our board members up for failure, because we've put them in the situation where they feel the only way they can bring people into our world, into our mission, is if they think these people have the capacity to make a large gift. And all those things put together means your board members aren't inviting people to events, aren't bringing people to tours, aren't making those connections. And it also might mean that they're feeling a little unsafe or unsure about their role as a board member themselves. So what do we do about this? The first thing we need to do is we need to reframe this conversation and move it away from capacity and into network, into the connections a board member has. That is, in my opinion, the superpower of all of our board members, is their networks. I used to tell board members that I worked with that I needed them to be in rooms that I was not in, that I was not aware of, that I was not invited to. I needed them to be in those rooms, not only talking about our mission, but listening for people who might be aligned with our mission. That is, again, at no point did I say, and make sure they have X amount of money, or make sure they have the capacity to give Y amount of money. That was never the conversation. The conversation was always about, I believe should always be about, the network that each board member is a part of. Now, I know what you're saying. You're saying, "Chris, I've asked my board to think about networking, and I've asked my board to think about people they can invite, and they look at me and they say, I don't know anybody to invite, or I don't know anybody at all, or I don't know that many people." Now, again, this is not a fault of your board members. Don't be mad at them. Don't be mad at them. What this is, though, is a very natural reaction to somebody asking you a question like that. I think that if I went into a nonprofit staff meeting and asked anybody on the staff, "Hey, who do you know that you could invite to the next event?" I think they would go blank as well. It's a weird thing that happens. I don't know. I could probably do research and tell you why this is, but all I can tell you, because I'm not going to do that research, what I can tell you, though, is that in order to get your board members and your volunteers to really think about the people they know, you need to kind of prime the pump. You need to get them in the mindset of thinking in this expansive manner. And sometimes you can do that simply by asking them some kind of basic questions about, to use the old Sesame Street song, like, who are the people in your neighborhood? Where do you work? Where does your partner work? Where do your kids go to school? Where did you go to school? What kind of car do you drive? Where did you buy it? Where did you, do you belong to a book club or a church or a YMCA or whatever it is? There's all these different circles that we as people walk through every day. It might be something formal where I belong to a professional association. It might be something informal where I go to the same gym. I've been going to the same gym for years, and I know these people at the gym because we all work out together. Like, there's all these different networks that people are a part of. But again, if our board members even subconsciously are thinking that they have to screen any network connection through this veil of capacity, then they're going to come up with nothing. Because again, we're not in a place usually to judge the giving capacity of another person. Now, that's not to say there's not a place for wealth screening and knowing that stuff. I think wealth screening can be a really important tool if it's done right and if it's done respectfully, and if it's done when you're thinking about maybe what sort of gift to ask a potential donor or a current donor for, or if you're identifying campaign prospects, that can be a very important tool. But when we're talking about cultivation activities, bringing people to an event, bringing people to a tour, sitting down with someone, bringing someone to a coffee meeting, these things are really independent of capacity, but they're really dependent on the board members' network, their ability to talk about the values of the organization, the ability to listen, to hear what other people value, and to find those matching components. So if you're frustrated with your board members or your volunteers, and you're frustrated because they're not inviting people to events or they're not bringing people into things, I really encourage you to take that step back with them, and instead of wagging your finger at them, or instead of just kind of giving up and saying, well, we can't count on these guys to do the thing we need to do, have the pointed, the focused, the deliberate conversation about their network, and really ask those questions to learn about the network that they belong to. And from there, build a strategy about how to bring up the mission, how to talk about the mission, how to talk about the values. There's lots of great things we can empower our board members to do that don't involve a capacity calculation that they have to make on the fly when they're thinking about whether this person would fit at their table or not. Now, if you would like to learn more about this very topic, I've got two opportunities for you if you're in the state of Washington, where I'm speaking with my colleague, Jennifer Lee Dodson. We're speaking on this topic at the Nonprofit Leaders Conference in mid-April and at the Washington State Nonprofit Conference in early May. So I'll put information about both those conference appearances in the comments below. If you're not in Washington and you're like, Chris, I still want to talk about this, but I am not in Washington, guess what? You can reach out to me. Let's talk. One of the things I do with clients in the Align and Accelerate program is to really dig into not only how we're engaging our boards around different aspects of fundraising, but how are we even talking about fundraising to our boards? Because sometimes the mistake lies not in their will to do the work, but in our ability to explain what the work actually means. And people fill in those blanks with things that aren't helpful. So reply to this video, respond to this message wherever you're seeing this, and let's talk, because your mission is too important to leave these things to chance. That's all for today. Keep up the great work. We'll see you soon.